Everyone has a story. Stories have power. They help us understand each other. This is Jessop's Journal. Hey Trent, great to see you.
Hey Doug.
Let's go chat. Trent, it's time to sign into Jessop's Journal. In this episode of Jessop's Journal, I have a gentleman by the name of Trent Weldon. So Trent, shameless plug, I go to certain happy places, and one of my happy places is the aquarium world.
Yes.
So we met at a new place called the Waterfront.
Correct.
So what the heck were you doing there?
So I met Lewis. So Lewis is the owner. It's a fish shop. I met Lewis opening day. I honestly stop in 2 to 3 times a week. I'm either talking with Lewis about new ideas, I'm shopping for fish.
I've had aquariums since I was, but I grew up near the beach, so it was fun stuff. But I also found out that we had another similarity, and that when you were in high school, you did the journalism gig.
I did.
Tell me about that.
I did. So I started halfway through my sophomore year, but by the time I was a senior in high school, I was the sports editor for my high school newspaper.
Oh, cool.
So I got to choose the stories, I got to edit everything, but it evolved into opportunities that I never saw coming. So I met the sports editor for the Salt Lake Tribune at a high school journalism conference, and that night was Bingham High School versus Alta High School state football game. Led me to opportunity. I got to be in the press box, interview coaches, interview players, and after that, he invited me to a Jazz game as a quote-unquote sports reporter.
Okay.
And from that opportunity, being tagged as a reporter for the Salt Lake Tribune, I got invited into the players' locker room. I got to actually interview, professional basketball players. Jerry Sloan is still the coach at the time. Got to talk with him. So the interaction that brought me really helped bring me out of my shell and I pushed bars. I pushed limits. I tried to interview as many people as I could outside of the high school, and political spots. The head coach for the Real Salt Lake soccer team at the time, I talked with him about the new Rio Tinto stadium that was being built. And so I took my press badge as a opportunity to go to different places, not just high school.
Oh yeah. Well, I did a story with the Jazz Bear, okay, the original Jazz Bear. I admit I felt like I was telling people who Santa Claus was, because that was the first television interview with him out of his costume. And so it's kind of cool to be able to find the people and everything that we've done. But the thing that people might not know is that, okay, this journalism thing is pretty cool for you, but you were dealing with some pretty serious stuff, and you still do. You have a medical condition. Tell me a little bit about that. So
I have the neurological disorder Tourette syndrome.
Okay.
If you on a scale, I'm fairly mild, but it's enough that it's noticeable. So my audible tics, they call them, it's the repetitive movements. I have, I sniff, I will clear my throat, I have a rapid eye movement. So it's things that are still, in a one-on-one interview where you're trying to get detail, it can be distracting. It actually can be. When you're in a crowded room and it's quiet, everybody's trying to get that one quote, and the guy in the back of the corner sniffs, like everybody knows who it's going to be.
Who the heck is that, right?
So I was very guarded in high school. I didn't want people to know who I was. I didn't want people to interact with me, because that means I have to now explain, no, I'm not, I'm weird, but I'm not weird enough. But it wasn't even they didn't call him a teacher, it was the journalism advisor, by the name of, his name was Brett Boberg, changed my perspective on who I was.
Really?
If I have to say, he was the mentor that helped me understand to push those limits in journalism, that made me more comfortable in, I can have a phone interview with a person and get engaged into it, that my Tourette's don't define me, it's just another part of me. Right. And it led into some great icebreak moments too, where people look at you very concerned, and you make a quip about it, and you continue on in your conversation, and it turns into none the wiser.
Okay, and this is a softball. I'm going to let you have some fun with this one. Of course, one of the things that everybody thinks is Tourette's is that one where you basically go on a blue streak of obscenity.
Yes, very much so.
So is that the case with you?
No.
But it gives you a great excuse if you want to.
Yes.
Okay, just saying, okay.
No, like, see, if you really look at people like family, friends, the wife, why'd you roll your eyes at me? I didn't. I have Tourette's. So it's gotten me in trouble a few times where I try
Is your wife watching right now?
She probably will be, yes.
Okay.
She's going to be poking fun at me on that one.
Well, the other thing that I look at is, for other people that might have Tourette's and everything, it's a neurological disorder, and it's kind of related to ADHD and all those other kind of crazy stuff. How was it, when you were growing up, and how long did it take to get a diagnosis?
I was 14 when I finally got a diagnosis. So it was almost 10 years of not knowing what I had, why I did what I did. It was awkward in elementary school. People tell you, do you need a tissue? And it's no, but I don't know how to tell you I don't need a tissue. I don't know how to tell you that I can't control this. So it was a long time, conversations with the parents. Are you nervous about things? And we notice you do these more when you're nervous. And we didn't know. We had no idea what I had or what to call it, how to attempt to, I don't want to say treat it, but know, right? So it wasn't until we tried, what was I, 12? We tried a medication that just made me very slow, very lethargic, and I think it's when we realized that it wasn't an ADHD. I could focus, I was very attentive, I could learn, I could apply myself, but it wasn't until I was 14, and this was after many arguments of I'm not going back to another doctor to get told that I'm sick, doctor came in, looked at me and says, you have Tourette's. And it was a moment of like, okay, now somebody knows what's wrong with me.
Well, the thing I look at is, I think just having, as a parent as well myself, just to be able to have that definition that this is what it is, it isn't just something in my head type thing, I gotta think was just incredible for your family.
It changed my perspective.
Oh yeah?
I think finally that, I was still a young teenager, but it gave me the understanding of my parents really didn't know what I had, and they did everything they could to support me. Right? As a parent, you want to see your child succeed. You want to see them, grow and go after their dreams and avenues. And so I think then for me to be able to turn to my parents and say, thank you for not giving up on me.
Wow.
Even though I was a stubborn teenager of, if you take me to one more doctor, I'm done. But the thing that changed was the doctor we talked to, his own child had Tourette's. And he chose to study that in order to help other individuals.
There you go.
And I don't remember this doctor's name or where he was at, but I just know that my parents' persistence on trying to get a name, and looking back, I appreciate it. Because now as an adult, to be able to say, this is what I have, but not to let it define me, was a pinnacle turning moment for me when I was a teenager.
No doubt about it. So I don't think there's really any medication per se. So how do you deal with it now as an adult?
The fish keeping hobby is a massive one for me. It comes down to, I know what triggers it, and I know what stresses it, and I know what calms me down. And it's, high stress situations, it's a little more noticeable. Good, slow enjoyment with family, with friends, where I'm engaged in an activity, exercise. I grew up playing soccer, and the number one thing people would tell me is like, hey, we never saw you twitch or sniff when you're playing soccer. And my answer was, I don't have time. I didn't have time to think about not doing it because I was so involved in the flow of the game, interaction. So it's back to the journalism in high school, was when I was focused on an interview, focused on a story, a topic, I would slow down and get out of my head, I like to call it. So now as an adult, it's relaxation time, slowing down, time with the daughter, time with the wife, getting outside, just an activity, something that challenges my brain, like fish keeping, to where I don't have to focus on, did I sniff so much today? It's just, I can just be me.
Now, I caught something that you said, and you talked about triggers and stress. I'm going to give you a slightly hard time about this, but you've got a really, what I would think is a very stressful job.
I do.
What do you do?
So I am a sergeant for the Utah Department of Corrections.
Okay, sergeant for the Utah Department of Corrections. That sounds like you're at the prison.
I am. I work at the Draper prison. So I've been there for about 5 years now.
Wow.
And been sergeant for almost 3 of that.
How in the world did you determine, did you just wake up one day and said, I want to be a cop and I want to go work at the prison? I mean, how'd that come to be?
So it started I wanted to get into law enforcement after probably the age of 20.
Okay.
I decided that's what I wanted to do. And I don't know if it came from watching TV shows or wanted to make a difference. It just interested me enough that I was working in Cabela's for a seasonal part-time job in the warehouse.
Okay.
And a gentleman there who we became friends, he was in the process of going through the police academy to become an officer, a cop. And he finally told me one day, he goes, why don't you just do it? He says, quit complaining and just do it. You hate your job, you want to do something you like. So that's what really started the process of I started applying to be sponsored by departments. So the department can sponsor you through the training academy. They hire you on for a certain amount of time. You sign contracts and that. And after testing for numerous agencies, it was the prison that was the first one to offer me a job.
Wow.
And so that's where I started.
Okay.
Started there. My initial thought was, I'll be here for 18 months, 2 years, transfer somewhere else. Well, 18 months came around and I liked what I was doing, that I decided to stay.
I did a news story a while back that I got to ask you about because I had a hard time processing it. I went in, and I think I'm the only person that's ever gone in and done an interview inside the women's prison. And they said, okay, the one thing you cannot ask is why they're here. Okay. Well, I asked their names and everything, and I'll be honest, I did the mistake of, after the news story, of checking it out, and I'm going, oh. Yep. So do you guys know what people are in for, and how does that work?
I know when I need to know. So I don't ask them why they're there, but I have access to my database, and for housing requirements, potentially even some programming requirements, I know, but I never ask details. I have access to details, but I don't look into details.
Right.
For reasons of I have to sleep at night. But it's also the other reason, and this is the hardest thing that I think people coming into this career have the hardest time learning. I still have to interact with that individual on a daily basis. And if I cloud my judgment, or if I lean towards a judgment, am I going to treat that individual with a bias? With a scarlet letter, have you, something that's going to make me not do my job appropriately towards that individual. So I know, but I don't go into detail.
Yeah, I can see that. We're going to ask a whole bunch of questions here that people out there, I got to say, geez, Doug, you got to ask him this.
I'm sure there's a lot coming.
It's like, okay, here we go. So I'm going to kind of rapidly fire through some of these things. But number one, so I did this story in the women's prison. And some of these sound like really stupid questions, but I just got to know.
Sure.
What's the difference between the women's prison and being in the men's prison from your standpoint?
So I've worked both. I'm currently a sergeant in the women's facility, so I have firsthand information there. I started in the male general population area. The main difference, honestly, is going to come down to emotion.
Oh.
We as men, we like to have the I don't need help. I'm tough. I have to act this certain manly way. I have to interact that way. Where the females, I had to learn that and then it's not equipped towards them, but there's just a different level of emotion.
Sure.
You know, so the way that I talk with them is different. You can be a little more gruff or very blunt with the male. Oftentimes we're either going to take it egoily or we're going to take it, towards our pride. Where the female, if I am too blunt, I can cause now a emotional response of, I hurt their feelings, like a better word. They process things different. But outside of that, there's some different incidents that take place, probably I would say. But it's men's like to play sports more than the females kind of do, but I think it comes down to just an emotional response of each one.
Well, it's natural and realistic to say that men and women are wired differently. That's
very
for
wired,
sure.
extremely different. Yes.
But when it comes to I'm not sure what the exact term in your language is, but let's call them incidents.
Okay.
Okay. I'm presuming that you have seen and been part of incidents.
Yes.
Okay. And I know you can't give me details, but what kind of categories do these incidents fall in?
We can break them down to simple as a fight. So an aggressor, I would say behavioral incidents. We have mental health incidents. We could even break them down into self-inflicted incidents. So are they going after, or are they fighting another individual, or are they fighting themselves? But then furthermore, then you can look into, is it a behavioral response that they're mad and trying to get attention or even help? Or is it a self-inflicted incident of they are in the middle of a delusion and don't really know what they're doing? Or is it a self-inflicted incident back to the emotion of they're very depressed, or there's a mental health concern on that basis?
So are the incidents that much different between the men's side and the women's side?
The men's side, I saw more aggression towards each other. The female side, I've seen more aggression internally.
Interesting. Have you ever felt that your life is in danger?
Yes.
Really?
It's odd that I don't hesitate to say that.
Okay. I know you probably can't give me details, but can you give me generalities?
Generalities being, it kind of goes towards a ratio. If I can give a ratio of how many officers per how many inmates.
Okay.
I've had incidents where there are times I've been one officer to 48 inmates.
Whoa, hang on. One you.
One me.
48?
48.
Okay. One of the big things we talk about or we hear in the media is prison overcrowding and all that kind of stuff. Is that really a problem?
It is to a standpoint, I would say. I think it depends on public perception versus opinion of how long prison sentences are, to even, pandemics we're facing right now in the world. There's a lot of people there, and I don't think people always understand why they're there. Because my reality is, they're arrested. I think people see that in the news, but then they forget about them, right? They're arrested. We're done with them. But what they don't understand is now they have to go somewhere, so they come to me. And now I am the one that I have to keep them there. I have to make sure they have their basic needs met, the necessities. Because once they're just arrested, we have to put them somewhere. So I think there's a large population, yes, but how do you physically staff 48 officers to 48 inmates, right? It's illogical, but it's an interesting mindset when you're one person and you have 48 individuals I don't want to say in charge of is too official.
Well, I understand you guys have taken an oath.
Yes.
That, from a protection standpoint, everything. Explain that to me. So
it's, I'm still a sworn safety officer of the state of Utah. My jurisdiction doesn't go beyond the prison, so I don't have, active policing capabilities in public. Mm-hmm. But in my jurisdiction of the prison, I still have civilians inside there, performing jobs, whether they're medical staff. We have individuals that, when outside of a pandemic we're facing, we have religious volunteers. We have high school teachers that come in part-time outside of their regular jobs to help these individuals. So number one priority is any civilianized personnel within the facility. Okay. They're my number one priority that I have to watch. The next personnel is going to be, other officers. I have a job, a duty to protect other officers, make sure their needs and safety are met. Then I also have, and this is the one that people struggle with, is I have a sworn duty to protect inmates. And the way I came to look at that is they're there for a reason, we know that, but they're still individuals. They're still a human being that have basic emotions and basic necessities. But I will say I have priorities. If I have a civilian in need, that's my first priority, down the chain to where they are.
So if you have a new officer coming in, okay, they've never been in the prison, it's like, okay, I'm gonna go work with Sergeant Weldon. Describe what their first day is like.
Exciting, unknown. So I have the fortunate opportunity of, I am a field training sergeant in the prison, so it's one of my favorite parts of the job. Because you come out of the academy, you're almost hot-headed, you're ready to go, right? You think you know everything. What else can you learn? Mm-hmm. Then you get down there, and now the first day, the first time they interact with an actual inmate, and they're interacting with somebody that may have been there for a life sentence. I have played those pranks on them where it's, let's give them the hardest guy to deal with first. Mm-hmm. But I remember my first day was full of excitement that I'm finally on the job, I get to do this, but then there's so much unknown where it's fun to watch them stumble through of, no wait, I learned about this, I know how to apply this, but then now I get to teach them. I look at it as they have the book classes, the text.
Right.
Let me teach you the way of the streets now. Let me teach you the interaction of these individuals. So I've seen many of them come down very excited, and I've also seen a few come down very nervous. Now we actually are interacting with inmates. And that's a big mindset for some people.
What's something that people might not know about working at the prison?
It's its own culture and society.
How so?
You take 1,000 individuals and you put them into one facility. You're now gonna have, and you cut off majority of the outside world, right? They understand why they're there. There's interesting mindsets that may change, some hierarchies, support groups that develop of, they have access to, outside news sources. They can watch that, they can see that. They have recreational gyms inside the prison that they can lift weights, do some cardio, play basketball. So it's a society of, they know that at certain times of the day, they don't have access to much. Other parts of the day, they have that hour outside that they cherish, they relish. So where me and you, we can decide, on a Tuesday morning, I'm gonna come sit down with Doug Jessop. Their Tuesday morning, they don't get that opportunity to go do what they want. So on the society-based, it's a very controlled society with limited flexibility of their day-to-day routine. But I also think that people forget that we're actually working down there. I think people drive by the prison on the interstate and they look over and go, oh yeah, that's the prison. But what they don't see is the officers, my staff, that, they're missing their son's birthday, their daughter's dance recital because they have to be at work. Now, granted, is that a profession we chose? Absolutely. I'll never argue that. But I think people forget that there are individuals down there actively working to keep them safe. I'm going to say that, to keep them safe, right? Mm-hmm.
Well, describe an average day for an officer.
So I am a 12-hour shift. So my shift starts at 6 a.m. My first, we'll say 30 minutes is I'm debriefing with my staff. We're talking of anything we have going on that day, anything we may expect that day. We have transports. I'm checking gear, making sure our equipment's good and orderly, making sure my staff's mindsets are good. From there, we get inmates out, right? We let them out of their housing units. They're in Now, breakfast is coming in, so we have to serve that, make sure everyone's taken care of. Then we move into things of there's medical appointments that need to be met. Outside of the pandemic, there's high school classes, there's religious classes, there's recreational classes. We have opportunities for individuals to be yoga instructors in the prison, right? There's all these areas that they can personalize in, but then we still have, and it depends on the unit you're in.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked in our Supermax facility.
Okay, now what does Supermax mean?
Locked down for 23 hours a day.
Whoa.
It's a very intensive management unit that we have to supervise individuals on that basis for maybe behavioral, even mental health, that we're the ones escorting them everywhere they go. So on a general population unit, we're more directing, right? Keeping the flow at a good pace. Where on that level, I'm setting the pace because I'm the one doing everything for this individual. So it's, some days are very routine directing. I'm a traffic director. You're going here at this time frame, you need to go here at this time frame. Where other days it's, I'm now the listening ear. So my time is taken up by somebody that needs to have human adult interaction. So I have to switch off one side of my brain of I'm not sergeant right now. Mm-hmm. I'm a cautious listening ear, but I have to switch back into the mode of I'm sergeant, I have to direct my officer to do this. So on a day-to-day basis, it can be very erratic or very methodical.
Interesting.
Of what we have going on.
So are there certain things that you guys look out for to, because I don't know if incidents just start spontaneously or if there's little cues that you guys look for?
Both. I've learned to watch people's body. Body language is a huge communicator that I don't think we all realize we do. The way you sit in a chair, the way you shift. Yes, so we are constantly on the lookout of, this individual isn't their normal self. You learn personalities. So I've learned that if this individual is talking a little differently today or acting a little differently today, we may have something happen today. We have access to, let me put it this way, we have information highways that we can watch. If we catch some information that maybe something's going to happen, we focus on this area a little differently. And then there are just the spontaneous, out of the blue, something started, we have to go handle it.
As an officer, is it more stressful to be in charge of a whole bunch of people in the general population, or more stressful to be dealing with fewer people, but these are the bad of the bad?
My personal experience is it's dealing with the general population.
Really?
And that's because of I'm the one person that 48 individuals will come to. I have the information. I need help with this. I need directions to this. How do I get to the high school? It's my first time here. Mm-hmm. I'm having a difficult time mentally. I just received a bad phone call and I need somebody to talk to about it. So where it's easy to focus on this person for a minute, move to the next person. We're in a general population setting. I'm running a group of individuals. I'm leading a group of individuals and getting them to the correct places they need to go. So I'm keeping track of 48 individuals versus I'm keeping track of 10 that I know where those 10 are at any given moment because they can only go to very select places.
Right. Is there a particular day of the week that that's like input day or output day, or is it, how do they do that?
There are, for reasons I won't give specifics, we do have set days, particularly right now with the pandemic, we have set days or a set day that we intake new people into the prison.
Okay.
So they're coming from jails, they come to us, and that's a very safe process right now with the pandemic going on. We have strict personal protective equipment we have to put on. As much as we want to make sure we're safe, we want to make sure the people coming in are safe.
Sure.
We still have, it's almost a basic human need. We still need to give them that respect.
Right.
From there, we do have 2 set days a week that we release people from prison.
Okay.
Whether they're going to a halfway house to integrate back into the community, or they're going to an address with a family member that has been approved and they can go live there, integrate back into the community. So there are set days right now that we have that.
So somebody has been there for a while. Mm-hmm. They do their time, they leave. How often do these same people come back?
It's unfortunately very high, to the point where they come into my unit and they know me. They know me by name. We use last names down there, and I recognize them. But it's those ones that, because every time I release somebody out of my building, I will tell them, like, good luck. Mm-hmm. And I had one stop and turn around and go, do you actually mean that? I go, yes, I do. I really do want you to succeed. My joke that I tell them is that there are prettier faces to wake up to than mine every morning. If you're seeing me every morning, we got something we got to work on.
Yeah.
But I do hope that whether it's a class they took, whether it's something I said, that they can integrate back into the community, become a productive member of society. Prison's not fun. I think we know that. Prison's not a fun place. So it is unfortunate to see that some individuals have a very difficult time breaking the habit or the addiction that will cause them to come back. But I do want them to succeed.
Right. Winding up here, the folks that make my journal, Rustico, have this hashtag. And this is the esoteric question of the interview, so I will get official here. So, Sergeant Trent Weldon.
Yes.
How do you want to leave your mark?
I think there's a lot in the name. So this is where I come into officer standpoint. Individuals I've trained, officers I've supervised. I want, when I retire in 30 years, I don't know how long, I want somebody that I have trained, I have worked with, that's still there. When my name comes up, I want it to be, I remember him. And here's a lesson I learned from him. I don't want to be remembered as, I remember, he was a nice guy. No. I want it to be, here's a lesson I learned from him. Because I've had mentors that I can specifically say, this lesson came from this person. So I want to be remembered. I want to make my mark of, there's a lesson I learned either from Trent Weldon or a lesson I learned from Sergeant Weldon. And it's something that they can carry with them the rest of their life.
Well said. Well, thank you very much for coming on Jessop's
Thank
Journal.
you. This has been very exciting.
Well, there's other people we got to thank. Of course, Rustico's the guy that makes my journals, so we got to thank them. Taylor Cooperative is the guys that make me look good, but the guy that really makes me look good is right there behind the camera. Hello, Ed. And then, of course, I got to wear the hats. I mean,
Sure.
JW Custom Hats does a great job. And yes, got to remember to do the hand sanitizing. From the guys at Five Wives. Yes, they make hand sanitizer, but they also make adult beverages.
Well, what's nice is that's going to be my work backpack.
There you go.
I always need hand sanitizer.
There you go. So the thing that I want people to remember is stories have power. They help us understand each other. With another entry in a Jessop's Journal and Trent Weldon, I'm Doug Jessop, ABC4 News.